on a ledge, on the ceiling, on the floor, as most probable options to be put in as a word at the end of that sentence. So that is called like the next word generation. Or it could be like a mass prediction. That is like the Roman Empire mass in the, I don't know, Augustus dynasty or something like that. So the model will say begin or end, right? And those two are correct, but the context is not correct. So one of the most common shortcomings of these chatbots, right, is that they generate human-like text, but sometimes they might not have the correct context, or the expectations of humans will not be up to standard, right? So we might not get what we're expecting for when we get a little question there. Now, in technicality, you can see there that the bots are trained in large amounts of data. So the predecessor of Chat GPT is called GPT-3. And the difference between GPT and Chat GPT is that now to account for that lack of context and human expectation, what they're doing is that they're introducing a human aspect to the training. And that is called the reinforced learning human feedback. And what it does is that they define a set of labelers. And then if you go to the second part of the slide there, is the step one, where they kind of like tell the model what is considered to be good as a good response, as a good prediction. And then they fine-tune a small model. Now they do a second step where they define a reward model. And they have the labelers give some feedback on what are the best answers for the same prompt, right? So they create a weighted model there. They retrain the model again, and they try to create a policy. That is, try to say to the model, this is good, and if you do this, then you should not do this because this and that. So give it some rules to create more human-like expectations. Now, there are many disadvantages to these, and then maybe someone can notice what is going to be the disadvantages. And in the paper that is linked there, and also listed here, is that sometimes the corrections from the human input might be biased because we don't know how they selected the labelers. We might not know what they consider to be good or bad, right? We don't know how is the ranking for the preferences. And in addition to that, the algorithm might create what is called hallucinations, things that look and sound like human, but they're not. They don't have any context. Maybe they are made up because it's probably, probabilistically is the most likely response. I'll stop there because I just wanted to be very, very quick. But it's like a million applications. It could be very creative. And I hope that we can find ways to do that here. And I really recommend the reading that is listed at the bottom because they explain in detail all the technicalities on how it was created. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Next. Sorry, why is this one? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So like with most things, there are different perspectives on Chat GPT, from enthusiastic embrace to caution and skepticism about artificial intelligence. So we have statements such as, are we at the dawn of a new industrial revolution? For example, an article in the Harvard Business Review reads, machines can now do things that could only be done by highly trained humans. Some valuable skills are no longer useful and new skills will take their place. And no one really knows what any of that means yet, which is true. We don't really know where it's going to go, but we know it's here and it's staying. A recent article in the New Yorker starts with this title that I found really applicable to this. OpenAI's chatbot offers paraphrase, whereas Google offers quotes. Which do we prefer? Others warn about seeing Chat GPT and other large language models as more human-like than they really are, because they are getting very good at mimicking human language. Skeptics like Gary Marcus of NYU warns that real AI, real artificial intelligence, would learn with the efficiency of human children and would be able to reason from principles and generalize. far more deeply than what Chat GPT does. And you'll see in some of the, when we talk about some of the limitations in more details. Okay, both the benefits and limitations of Chat GPT tools are many. Some of the things that it can do surprisingly well are it can write business reports, lectures, recipes, paragraphs, it can summarize, it can generate ideas for blogs, for website content, for business plans, etc. It can create code. And I think the most important thing here, in contrary to the previous version, is that it can take feedback from humans. So you put something into Chat GPT and you're not happy with what you get, you can give it a follow-up prompt to revise it. So there's a link in the slides to a path from an idea to a final draft of a researched article by a journalist illustrating how Chat GPT can be used to speed up that process. Its most important limitations, and you will soon see it for yourself, is that the text may sound a little too general and vague without a follow-up prompt. But it can produce a well-written but completely nonsensical text. For example, of these, what Milena referred to as hallucinations of these nonsensical texts is an article describing what ChatGPT is comparing churros and arguing why they're much better than surgical instruments to perform surgeries. Or another one where it explains the benefit of crashed glass for health. So it can produce total nonsense like that. It's importantly as well, it makes errors with citations, and it can refer to articles and books that do not exist at all. But somehow it generates chunks of language that are put together and make it sound like a good title of a book or a good title of an article. There is also another thing is that what Milena mentioned earlier, that it reproduces bias and offensive content. There's an article in the Times, actually, sorry, not the Times, about low-wage workers in Kenya who are who sift through the text which serves as input to ChatGPT to remove offensive content. Whatever the limitations, whatever the benefits, it is here to stay, and it's growing daily, and it's growing by maybe by the hour as well. There's so much out there, but we try to kind of limit the field a little bit for you. So here is Learned AI that was recommended by Reen Jafar, a math professor here. I'm sure you're familiar. For education professionals, where you can go and input prompts and get the tool to generate lesson plans, to generate discussion questions, to summarize things for you, multiple choice text, things that you may find useful in your classroom. Another site here is Future Tools. It's not particularly vetted, but it gives you a huge list of all the different AI tools that are out there. I included a link to ChatGPT and Excel functions because you can tell the tool what you want Excel to do for you, and it will give you the Excel formula that you're supposed to use for that, rather than searching for it yourself.
So before we continue, I think there are some questions in the chat.
Yes, there is one question, and by the way, I'm monitoring the chat, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them there. Boyana asks, so ChatGPT could understand a paper assignment and write it? The more complex the instructions, the less likely it might be able to figure out the context? And some people have responded already. I'll let you answer that, and we can take a look at the chat for additional comments.
Yeah, I think that's important to stress the word understand. So what that really means, understand. So ChatGPT will be able to follow the instructions of reading a set of words that are in an article, and then be able to write a response depending on the instructions of the assignment. It doesn't mean that it's learning from it. It's just taking that as a input to be able to produce the most likely text that sounds like a human that follow the instructions, right? So that's why, it might look like it's good, but this kind of like output might create an opportunity in the classroom to say, okay, let's go back and do the work that we do every day when we, grade as essays, right? It's like go back and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Let's see if the citations are correct or not, or it exists. So I think that is like what we need to be careful about. I don't think I will use the word understand for ChatGPT. It's just going to use that to get it as part of the instructions, right? Because as we were discussing, we're preparing, right?
Yeah, this is a caution in general that some scientists in the field put out, that it should not be given the human characteristics because it's really not human. The way it generates input has absolutely nothing to do with human intelligence. The way a 4-year-old would learn something from what would come up with conclusions about the world based on what they already know. So ChatGPT doesn't work like that.
But I think that one of the things I saw too, I know that I was reading some articles a while ago, and there's a bunch of websites where they use AI for students who don't want to write papers, that they can take an already written paper, put the whole entire paper into the AI, and it rewrites it for them. It reads words, everything.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I'm wondering how they do checks about whether or not people like do anything independent.
So there are some tools to do those checks, and then sometimes what happens is that if the text was created by AI, let's say ChatGPT created ChatGPT something by ChatGPT, and then it was adjusted and then put back in there, ChatGPT might say, I don't know, inconclusive. I don't know if I can, like not ChatGPT, but the checkers, like I think it's called Zero, ChatGPT Zero, and there is another one, and they might just go back and say, I cannot tell if it is AI or human. And then you can put them through that. So there are tools, and they're being kind of like growing on the numbers of tools that you can use to identify AI text.
So it is in the slides. We put it there, but we wanted to reserve the time for you all to have those conversations in small breakout rooms. But it is there, the link to some of these tools. So essentially, the approach that you can take is consider something that you've already been doing in your educational practice as teachers, and maybe bring some of these old things back and use them much more than you are currently. Consider alternative forms of assessment, and consider banning ChatGPT. But let's think about what happened with calculators and math teachers. Math didn't disappear as a school subject once calculators were invented. So there are things out there like that where math teachers say, hey, writing teachers, it's your turn now. It's your Casio moment.
Yeah.
To think about. So I just wanted to show you that this is there, but we're not going to go over that. We'll get ready to get into breakout rooms and give you the instructions for that. Sorry.
So in general, like these kind of questions we want you to have in the back of your mind when we're going to be doing the breakout activities in your practice. Maybe not only in teaching, for example, in research, in writing, in doing so many things that are related to our profession. So maybe we can go to the next. Yeah. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down into 2 different types of groups. There are going to be several breakout rooms for novices and for people who feel more like advanced and intermediate users. And then for those 2 cases, we're going to paste the instructions of what we're going to be doing in each of the 2 rooms. For the novices breakout rooms, we're going to be doing some hands-on on how to log in, use ChatGPT and play with ChatGPT a little bit, and then think about the potential users of it. And
and as you can see, this was generated by ChatGPT.
This was generated by ChatGPT. So we were preparing, like, we're asking, you please provide us with instructions on a workshop for faculty that are intermediate, novice and advanced level, and they did it. And you can just like use whatever you want and then reject things that you think are not appropriate. This will be the activities we're going to be doing for the novice users in the groups that are going to be for people who are not very familiar with ChatGPT.
Yes, and we'll drop the links in the chat before getting into breakout rooms.
Yeah, and for the intermediate and advanced users, it's going to be kind of like really thinking about the deep issues and trying prompts that are more advanced, maybe related to cloud deployment and real kind of like things where we want to see what ChatGPT can do. And we're going to share these links once we're in the breakout rooms.
So these are the instructions. Select your breakout rooms based on your level of comfort. Select a facilitator, a note catcher, and a timekeeper for each room. And ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, and then you can just show up in your
I think I need to turn this off now too.
Yeah, I need to troubleshoot something real quick. Some people are not able to.
Everybody has an account for ChatGPT? We
Yeah.
one now.
Yeah, so that's the idea, to go and create it now. The site is openai.com. So, I mean, those would be the instructions in the openai.com. Or if you want to try the ones for education specifically, it's learned, LEARNT.ai.
Okay, so now.
What's the difference between the two?
One is specifically for education. So the first one is the original ChatGPT. The other one is one of these companies that mushroomed and are using this for their own business. Yes.
Okay, so the instructions for are on the breakout.
So, well, we can work here, I think. We can work here if you novice or intermediate advanced, is just go to ChatGPT and try to start, and then we can just go to each other here.
So these are,
Verify your agreement.
Yeah, it's so weird already.
What is it?
Verify that. I mean,
Big thing?
there was a New York Times article today about how weird it can get it, like the collection we were talking about. You can read it, it's just.
okay, so
If there's so many.
Just sign up, right?
Yeah, I know. You can use any email address to sign up.
Yes. That's the one for most people to do.
okay, so if you're on Zoom, you should be able to see two links on the chat. One of them is the slides that we have been showing, and the other one is the instructions for the breakout rooms. Okay, we're going to open the breakout rooms momentarily as you give us a moment. Novice users, you don't have instructions for the advanced users.
No, it's, that's what she mentioned in the.
Okay,
So we have the links for the two for the advanced.
There is a link for that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
In the instructions here.
It's nothing, but there was
if anyone here in the room
Okay.
is joining via Zoom, just make sure that the volume of your device is all the way down to 0, so that way there's no echo. Okay. We're going to open the breakout rooms momentarily.
And there is a link for the intermediate and advanced users too. It's just in the chat. We just dropped it in the chat.
Okay, great. What are we going to do with folks in here? Are they going to be in a group themselves?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the group, so then they need to.
They don't need to jump.
Okay, so.
And then feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions and you want us to come in to your group.
Hey guys, you need to give us access to the instructions.
Oh, let me see, maybe that one.
Which one?
The second one.
The one that you copied from that paper. So just, if you go there.
For the intermediate ones.
Yeah, for the intermediate.
No, just click on. Okay, regular.
This is my account. I can just do it in my own.
Okay, so you just need to send the link.
Well, the instructions are also in the PowerPoint. If you go to slide, I'll tell you. It's this discussion prompts essentially. It's slide 11.
Slide 11.
Slide 11 is the instruction for intermediate to advanced.
Oh, there you
user.
go.
It's, yeah.
Slide 11.
Just put it there.
Oh, okay, some people are doing it.
Slide 11.
It's writing a paper for me on ancient Rome.
Okay, so I'm going to open the breakout rooms for those of you who are joining us via Zoom. You will be able to find 6 different breakout rooms. It's up to you how you, which group you would like to join. Okay, there's 6 rooms for novice users, and there's 2 groups for advanced or perhaps intermediate users. All right, you can go ahead and join in as you wish. And how long are we going to be in the breakout rooms?
Until 2.
Until 2 o'clock. And then those of us who are here will be on a separate group as well. Okay, the instructions are on the Google Slides that we shared. And should you have any questions, you can come back to the main room and then let us know as well.
Yeah, and all the instructions are in the slides as well. Never mind what she found.
Okay, in case anybody who's joining via Zoom is having trouble joining a breakout room, put it on the chat and I'll manually move you through that group. No worries.
So you see, okay, so I can write.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Yeah, we need two here.
Yes.
So we're going to ask you to just share with us for it, like per group, maybe one or two things that you think are important to share with the whole group that you discussed in your breakout rooms. And then we're going to take notes to see probably we can create more events like this to have discussed more things about deep implications of
Sure.
ChatGPT or.
Yeah, if you-
something like.
If you had a chance to look at the summary of the faculty wish list about ChatGPT, if there's anything that came up in your conversations, you can add that as well, like in future events to facilitate collegial interaction around this.
So anybody would like to start?
Okay, I can just say one thing. Hi, everyone. In my group, we just couldn't get past like being really worried, or maybe I was the worried one. It just seems like we played around with the tool and entered some prompts, and it just seems like too good. I can see how it could be very tempting for a student to use the tool as a way of writing assignments. So a lot of our conversation was surrounding that, like how do we prevent this? How do we deal with this? What does this mean for education? So that's where our conversation was. We tried to think about the potential benefits of this, but we really never quite got to that part.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else?
Yeah, we pretty much discussed very similar topics in terms of, how is it going to impact the way we teach our classes? And what came up for us was the fact that students have already been using this, not necessarily our students. I've known about this for some time, but the fact is that like Facebook, for example, 20 years ago, and other social media platform, in the beginning, it took time for it to really explode. And I think this is something that is definitely going to be here forever, not go away. So in terms of the way we teach, I think it's just going to change the way, we produce, students produce information. If they're, for example, using this in my classes, I would ask them to present information, because in order to present information, you really have to understand it in order to present it. And that could be a way for us to assess if, again, the student gained knowledge. Now, I totally agree with the fact that, when we write, we are also learning, right? We're gaining knowledge, okay? But if this is going to be, the way we move forward into the future, then it's going to be more about how do we absorb information? How does the human brain continue to absorb information so that we can understand it and then present it? So that's one thing. And then one of the things that we talked about is the fact that it reminded me of when Excel was created by Microsoft in the early 1980s, and how a lot of mathematical stuff and reporting and whatnot was done manually prior to that, right? Or maybe using, IBM supercomputers that very few people had access to. And now Excel is available to everyone, and it really allowed us to progress in terms of, things like reporting, analytical stuff, et cetera. And I kind of see this similar to that, except the only thing that it takes away is the creativity of the human brain. And that's what I believe it's going to impact.
Thank you. Somebody else?
Sorry.
Lucy?
Go ahead.
Yes, in continuation of Sandra's, conversation and, the point that we raised as a group, because we were in the same group. I'm just mentioning that I tried so many math problems there. I started with just a simple factorization. Then I tried with a rational function to find the asymptote. And it showed me all the possible steps and explained it in details. Where do we start? What do we do? What comes next? And so on and so forth. So it was like very interesting thing. So it does solve a lot of problems. I asked for graphing and it sent me to some link, which sent me to kind of links that we know that provide solutions in mathematics. So probably, I don't know, it just gathers the information from other sites as well. I don't know.
That's
Exactly, but
interesting, Lucy, because I gave it some too, and it like, I asked it to factor and it did factor one right. And then I asked it to factor another one and that one was wrong, but the sort of wrong answer a student might give. Then I asked it to show its work and it showed its work backwards. And it actually wasn't performing that great for me on basic math, algebra.
well, for the examples that I tried, the answers were correct. And it gave me all the steps. It showed the steps of how. It said that in order to look for the vertical asymptotes, we have to factor the denominator and all that stuff.
I just think it's interesting that our two versions seem to perform very differently.
Yeah.
On that.
I don't know.
I have a question for like Milena or someone who has more experience with this maybe. Does this only take text questions? Is that the only way you can ask this thing questions? Like, is there a place you could upload like an instruction file to it or like a table for it to view and read? Or is it just like questions that you can type or paste from, in text?
So as far as I know, ChatGPT, the free account only takes on input as text because it's a conversational chatbot. That's why for Lucy, it will give her access to a link to where to go. ChatGPT is not connected to the internet, so it only looks at databases and information after September 2022, right? So if you ask about something that is after September 22, it will make up a hallucination about it, right? It will just guess and extrapolate. About the tables and files, maybe you'll be able to upload files in the paid version of ChatGPT, but for tables, there's actually another AI called Akio, AKKIO, where you can actually do data analysis for it. I tried and it doesn't work very well. And I just wanted to mention too that ChatGPT has a unique feature, and is that the first step in the training was actually done with a model that is a language model for coding, not for language, right? And then later they fine-tune it with language, like spoken language. So that's why it's really, and it goes back to the question, it really depends on how you ask the question. And then based on that way you ask the question, it might give you correct or incorrect answers. So if you write prompts that are very uniform, it's going to give you very most likely correct answers. If you write your question in a weird way, it might give you some wrong answers. Because it depends if that prompt has not been part of the training set or something similar, it would just like guess and extrapolate.
Yeah, there are some examples where if you put in a question about math and you make it a sentence, it's going to give you that 2 and 2 is 5. For example, if you make it as a situation, there were 2 people at the birthday party and 3 were outside. How many people were there all together? And it's going to give you something completely wrong. And then the proponents of ChatGPT say, well, yeah, but it was not trained on math. On math problems.
For that purpose,
exactly.
Yeah.
So of course it doesn't perform well because it was not trained for that.
Yeah.
So that's
I think.
Okay. Anybody
Dr.
else?
X? Dr. X?
Hello, everyone. One thing that I think we should know is that just because, the bot was trained with materials until 2021 doesn't mean that you cannot, like I did. I just copied and pasted an entire essay and I said, summarize this as something that you've never seen before, right? And he said, oh, I can't do it because I don't have it. And I'm like, okay, so here it is. I just copied and pasted it. And then it's like, oh, okay, thank you. And then, so students can, if it's a digital thing, the students can just copy it into ChatGPT, the whole thing or piece by piece, and then they will have it to work with it. So just because, the material sent up to 2021 doesn't mean that, people are not adding stuff actively as they use it. So just a thought on that.
But it's not part of the train, it will learn about that, but it will not be part of the next answers. It might use some of the words, so it's not training on that.
Just saying.
Oh, just because users have done that, that
Yeah.
doesn't go into a database of trained material.
Yeah, exactly, because what is happening with the reinforced learning, which is crazy, because, you know, it again goes back to the labelers, right? Who does the fine tuning.
Right, but let's not forget, we're getting GPT-4 coming up. And I'm pretty sure that the reason why they have made it free is so that we can give it all that good stuff, so that 4 is better than 3.
So they're using those prompts and those outputs to retrain and fine tune their policy models and the reward model. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be better, it's going to sound more human, and it will be more likely most of the time correct, like often correct. More like, how you say that in English? ChatGPT, maybe it can help you. More frequently, right? It's going to be correct than like for 3.5, for 4.0, right? But yeah, there's a lot, like, I really recommend you to go to that link on the technicalities, because it really explains that process and the shortcomings of it from human input. So it's a really good reading. Anybody from the room here in person would like to share something? I can maybe share, I was having conversations with everybody.
I think for the students, we have to use Chat GPT to prompt them to the next step. Like, instead of asking them to write a letter, for instance, you ask them to go to Chat GPT, put the letter, and then what is your feedback on it?
Yeah, to the letter that you received.
To what Chat GPT will give him.
That's like, yeah, we need to learn like how to use it in the classroom so our students will not fall behind, and because it's going to stay, right? So we want them to be able to use it and don't like go away and say like, what is ChatGPT? And then, okay, I'm gonna hire because I don't know how to use AI, or like, you know, you don't even heard of it. Like, we need to, like, it's an equity question, right? We need to really be able to provide students with the knowledge that they need.
Using it like responsibly.
Responsibly, exactly, critically, yeah.
Critically.
I have a question. I wonder if when we put good questions and then it comes out with something, and if we give any positive feedback, the company will take over that information. It's like when you put something in to turn it in, then the document that you put in, it becomes part of turn it in. So I'm
Yes.
wondering if you know if that is going to be the same. So it's going to grow with the information fed by the instructors or by the students themselves.
It does not grow the information database, but it is used for the fine tuning of the algorithm for the next policy.
Right. And let me tell you that it works in Spanish. I just very simple say, because I teach Spanish too, and I asked if they could write a dialogue. I didn't specify, give any instructions, and wrote in perfect Spanish a full, complete dialogue, which made sense. So I thought it would only be in English, but no,
No, it does also in Spanish. Yes.
it does in Spanish as well.
In other languages as well.
Yeah.
Chinese.
Yeah.
I asked my brother Chinese.
Okay, Chinese. There's a question here in the room, Evan.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to Santo's concern about creativity and how this could actually hinder creativity. I think we need to think about how to use this with students creatively. Just kind of playing around with some of the possible searches, it could be a great way to get students to compare and contrast perspectives. I think there's a whole bunch of possibilities, but I think it's going to require us to think very carefully about how we might use it creatively versus just as a tool for getting information or finding, answers to solutions.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking about it now, and, a lot of people have concerns about like, how students are going to misuse this, but then they were saying the same thing when we first had Google. When those search engines were coming out. People
Oh,
were
yes.
afraid of people getting information. So it's really just like the next step of that.
Or Wikipedia.
Or Wikipedia or anything like that. So we just need to make sure that there are things in place that will help, against that. like students like misusing it.
Okay, we're running out of time. Sure.
The last question. Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Next, please, do you have another comment?
I have 3.
Okay.
Okay. One, one, watch out for students in second languages who can grab something in their own language, have GPT translate it and present it to you as their original work. Because it goes both ways. It also works in Russian, by the way. I had a Russian friend, do a whole thing with me. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I really, really want us to realize that I'm a Wikipedian. I actually have my students edit Wikipedia. This is AI, and it's the beginning of AI. This is a completely different animal. It grows exponentially. The CEO of Google said that basically AI is growing twice, like what it's learning is twice every 6 months. So it's another level of insanity that we've never really experienced before. It really is kind of like calculators, but not really, because it's artificial intelligence and it's gonna get worse. So yeah, and I can't remember what the third one was, but I think yeah, we're scared of as it is.
That's what it was.
One last thing about exponential growth. It took 2 weeks to OpenAI and ChatGPT to get 100 million users. Spotify took 5 years to get there, right? TikTok took 2 months, right? These took 2 weeks or 5. I don't know if it's 1 week, 2 weeks. So it's just everybody is interested, and the market is strategy. And maybe we need to stop, but maybe we need to do another session about the implications of these on the large scale. I think Rebecca has.
Yeah, take one more question. Rebecca?
I just want to thank you so much for this great conversation. I really appreciated the suggestions on slide 13 of the slideshow, which again, as we talked about briefly in the group, I found that I think again being more specific and cumulative, I think those are very good suggestions. But I just wanted to say I also I do think it's important for us to think about, and I hope we can have other conversations about ways that we can incorporate the use of this in the classroom. And because for all the reasons that people have already said, right, but also because I think that it can be a useful tool for getting students to do sometimes even the kinds of analysis that I'm already asking them to do, right, by comparing the things I'm already asking them to do with what Chat GPT might produce, and they can sort of they can do even further critical analysis, right? But I think it's also important to think about again, thinking about ways to incorporate this in certain ways in the classroom, just to make students aware of what is happening. And I think it's also, I guess I just want to end by saying, for me personally, I feel like I just don't want to walk into my classroom assuming that all of my students are planning to cheat, right? And I really do think that a lot of the students in the majority are there, they do want to learn, right? And they do want to do their own analysis, and they do want to be challenged. And I think that bringing this tool in a way that kind of pushes them to be further challenged it could be very exciting. So
Excellent point.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we are out of time, pretty much. Are there any last minute suggestions for what you would like to see from the center in terms of opportunities for people to get together? Could you maybe just put them in the chat as you're leaving, because we don't really have time to collect those.
Robin?
Yes. Robin, go ahead.
I think you're muted.
No, she's unmuted now.
She's not muted, but.
We don't hear you.
We don't hear you.
We don't hear you, Robin.
No, can't hear you.
So.
You put it on.
you can save.
Just got my first hallucination.
Oh, okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to engage in this topic. And as I said, just before you leave, could you put in like your wish list? What would you like to see? What kind of opportunities? I was thinking maybe people want to get together in who teach the same subject or by assignments, by the ways in which they want to use Chat GPT. So any suggestions, we'll take a look at that. And I think this thing is here to stay, and we have to provide opportunities for everyone to engage with it. So thank you all. We'll leave everything open so you can continue to put in your suggestions in the chat. Thank you. It was a great discussion, both online and here. Those of you who are here, could you please sign